Hi, I'm Cal Barron and welcome to RWK Goodman's Legal Thinking. According to the government, there are more than 2.5 million separated families in the UK, and more than 4 million children living in separated families, figures which are both increasing year on year. Earlier in 2025, the Ministry for Justice said it was committed to improving the experiences and outcomes of the family court system, amidst concerns from the BBC that the average process was taking too long and causing additional complexities. But what can be done to inform people of how the family court system works, as well as areas where work may be required? Well, an innovative production sponsored by RWK Goodman, which is being performed at the Royal Courts of Justice, written by a former leading family court judge, and starring actors who work within the family law system themselves, hopes to address some of those questions. The production, entitled Daisy Through the Looking Glass, aims to hold a mirror up to the family law system and the real impacts it can make on families itself. Joining me to talk through many of these things are Stephen Wildblood KC, Jacob Crossley, James Evans, and Carlie Norris. James, I'd like to start with you if that's all right. From your perspective, what is this production all about?
It's a good question. It's about a human experience. It's about a family court experience. It's about an experience that a lot of people will either be able to resonate with themselves or know someone that they can resonate the story with. In the world that Stephen and I work in, stories like this come up regularly. What is often forgotten is the significance of how it impacts the people, the individuals, their family, and how long that impact can be. So for me, this production is it's about seeing what that actually looks like, how it actually plays out, how it affects the people, and of course, most importantly, the child in this scenario, how it affects them in later life. So it's a story that's hard to watch and can be challenging at times, but it's such an important message that we need to spread, such an important story to tell, and a perspective that is often perhaps disregarded more than it should be.
There's someone who works within the kind of family law sector, obviously working for our family wizard. In your experience, how important is the role of communication?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think from my experience of family law over a few years, it's no matter who you are or where you're from or what your situation is, if you're going through some sort of family breakdown or separation, communication is hard. Communication is always going to be hard. It's always going to be challenging. Even if it's amicable, there's always elements of that family dynamic where communication will need to come into play, and you'll need effective communication. The story in Daisy with Dave and Maggie is no different. There are elements of their relationship which are unsuccessful due to difficulties in their communication. So from our perspective at Our Family Wizard, trying to find ways to help with communication is so important, whether that be an online tool or getting advice from the right type of practitioner. And we just want to help. So I think the crossover of worlds of what we do with Our Family Wizard and the work Stephen and I and the rest of our group are doing with this production, I think showcases the importance of something like communication, as well as many other topics. But I think we're passionate about improving communication to improve family breakdowns where we can.
Jacob, take me a little bit through Dave as a character.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting one. I think he has a lot of repression. I myself, coming from kind of a background or a family that, kind of working class and from council estates and from that kind of neck of the woods. There are a lot of traits in Dave that I recognize from male figures within my life, traits where he has an inability to, truly express himself. And when he does, it's often with manipulation or guilt attached to it. And I think what's really interesting throughout the piece is you're seeing a man ravel in through. Normally you're seeing somebody unravel as the play goes on. And I think that you're seeing the effects of repression throughout someone's life, and it's almost like stages of grief. It's like stages of repression and the effect that it has on somebody, and the inability to really communicate effectively. Coming from a method acting background, I've created a dossier or a profile on Dave, and I think, he's somebody that will have suffered abuse. So abuse to him is something that's very different to the standard father or the standard partner. So hitting someone or sexual assault to him doesn't really register in the same bracket as it would another person. I think there's a huge amount of denial. I think he has no accountability with a lot of stuff, and he looks to push the blame to other people. I think that's really evident throughout the piece.
Carlie, just to bring you in, tell us a little bit about Maggie. How does she contrast with that character?
So I think, Maggie starts off her relationship with Dave as just being this madly in love. He's a soldier, he's exciting, their relationship is exciting. She's absolutely head over heels for him. But I think Maggie has a lot of past demons and difficult relationships, and she struggles to navigate that and understand really where the boundaries are for her with that. And when Daisy comes, the one thing that really impacts Maggie time and time again is this feeling of isolation or loneliness, being left by the people that are most important to her, and Dave is her world. And what happens is, I think, really sad for Maggie, because I think that there is such a thin line sometimes between love and hate and understanding what those emotions do to us as a person. And you can see this kind of constant inner turmoil for Maggie, and this like fierce protectiveness, which actually turns into a real kind of crusade to keep her child all to herself, to protect her. And I don't think Maggie will ever feel love like she felt with Dave at the beginning. And there's real sadness to Maggie. It's shown as anger, but there's real sadness behind that. And I have met a lot of Maggies, and I see a lot of Maggies on a daily basis. And I think that Maggie's journey is not a one-off. Maggie's journey is something we see too much of.
That leads me on really nicely. I was going to say that you obviously work as a mediator off stage. So I imagine a lot of the experiences that Maggie, the character, goes through is probably echoing stuff that you see on a regular basis. How has that kind of influenced how you want to perform that character, and how much towards the real life system and what that looks like does this kind of align to?
So I think there's a couple of things for me, and I think I was really drawn to this play, actually not because of Maggie, but because of Daisy, and the impact on Daisy as a result of these two parents that just are unable to put any other emotions in front of their own in that moment in time. And I see time and time again as a mediator how the system that we create, the conversations that we have, children's voices are lost, children's needs are lost, and adult positions take over the need for children in those moments. And, I think that there are bits of us that all connect with Maggie and Dave. Of course there are. And I think anybody that has experienced separation, which is most people, either directly or indirectly, will have connected to parts of Maggie and Dave's story. But I think as a professional, we all can connect to Daisy's story. We all can connect to seeing the impact on a child as a result of them navigating that journey of family separation. And that's something that I really feel really passionately that through drama, what I'm hoping is achieved is that we win the hearts and minds of a community around how we need to do things differently around family separation. Family separation for me is not a justice issue. Family separation for me is about family. It's about children. It's about family. And this is a human experience that these two people are showing. And as a result of the system that wraps around them, we're seeing this escalation in this human experience to the point where nobody can get what they need back. And in the middle, we have this little girl who has no connection to the people that she needs it most. She's lost, isn't she?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think this play is much about loss as it is about anything else, like loss of love, loss of relationships, loss of experience, and you almost see the stages of loss and grief through the performance as well.
Stephen, I'd like to bring you in here if that's all right for a quick question. Carlie and Jacob have just spoken a lot about how this centers around a child essentially as well at some point. What, from your view as the writer, producer, director, what is the benefit of having that perspective within the performance as well?
Well, I think it's really important to hear the voice of the child. And Daisy speaks from the future to not just the parents, but also to the judge, and tells them what a mess they've made. So everyone thought that they were doing the right thing in the court case. The judge thinks he's doing the right thing. The mother and the father, Dave and Maggie, both think that justice is on their side. Whereas actually that whole system is destructive. And I agree with Carlie that there has to be a different way of dealing with things. These are private family issues which should be resolved privately between the family members themselves, if possible, and people should only go to court as a last resort. So that's part of this. And it's really tragic, I think, that Dave and Maggie had such difficult upbringings themselves about which they speak. And then from that, and all the understanding that you get in relation to that, you then see them in court with this very harsh environment that really railroads through their backgrounds.
Jacob, I'd just like to quickly come back to you. Appreciate, as you are someone who works with the support through court, talking a lot about self-representation. Dave in this performance is self-representing himself. Has some of those experiences that you've seen through your kind of professional work translated through to Dave in that performance?
Yeah, sure. I've been in support through court for 3 years now, and I've done my fair share of shadowing, and we dive into the cases to be able to use them for our material and for bond raising stuff. So, I think it's funny, we kind of were speaking about it in the office the other day, and we were saying about how you could do this play. You could do the scene where he's in court and, he's trying to give evidence. You could literally do the scene with a support through court volunteer, and it would completely change the scene. Dave is a litigant in person who doesn't have the tools, the literacy, the patience, the scope of which to understand the gravity of the situation, but then also just the minutiae of how it works, and how you're not allowed just vocabulary off the street, and there has to be certain levels of respect and etiquette, and if that isn't met, then you're simply just dismissed, even if you have some validity and weight of evidence on your side. I think for me that scene is a real important scene as a match, or for the fuse of frustration, where he's frustrated with the situation. He's frustrated that he isn't being heard. He's frustrated he isn't being listened to. He's frustrated that he can't voice what he wants to voice. And I think it adds that level of vindictiveness to him. He's really just it gets to a point when he's just throwing daggers, and it's because of an inability to be heard. In large part due to his own incompetencies, but also because of a system which the average person doesn't have access to, and is incredibly difficult and stressful and can at times be humiliating. And I think everyone is due their day in court, and it should be fair, and it should be an easy process for somebody to be able to do that. So yeah, it's definitely something which is on the back of the mind in the process.
And I think a real stark contrast to Maggie, who is supported, who does have lawyers, and I think that there is an immediate power imbalance, and that is really clear to see. And I think that is what I mean by that system that wraps around us. There is a real defensiveness from Dave, and a real kind of winning mentality from Maggie, because she knows she's got him in that moment. Like she's got the team. She's being given everything that she needs, and he isn't. And I think where there is a power imbalance in a family matter, that automatically creates its own conflict and its own issues. And ultimately, these two people are somebody's parents that are sat in this courtroom, and that is a child's life.
I guess one last question is what are you guys hoping the audience takes away from seeing a production like this?
I mean, I can jump straight in there because I am so passionate that this system has to change. As a mediator, somebody that worked in children's services before then, and now a family mediator, my whole career is about how we can make this better for children and young people who experience family separation. And it doesn't always need to be a really negative story. It doesn't always need to be a daisy, but I think that there is improvements across the board. I would love to win the hearts and minds of people to join that narrative around how we make this better for children and families who experience family separation, and how we shift a narrative away from justice and how we move closer to families.
I completely echo that, and I think that's so important. I think for me, at a human level, I hope to reinstill compassion. I think it's very easy for people to step back emotionally from people. In a situation like this, there has to be an element of being pragmatic and looking at the facts and taking that into consideration. But with that comes, a reduction in compassion, because people, this people's 9 to 5, it's people's jobs, and if you take that home every day, then you probably won't make it through a week, let alone a year or a whole career. So. But I think with that being said, I think as a society in general at the moment, compassion is just on the wane so much. We're so unable to meet in the middle anymore. And I think, I'm not quite as in the eye of the storm as everyone else in terms of their professional capacity. I'm more on the edges in what I do in helping people. So I think for me, and I'm a fundraiser, so I'm always looking for the human element. And I think it's so easy for people just to get lost in the system, and just to be forgotten about, and to not be heard, and just to be put at the bottom of the pile. And sometimes I'm neurodivergent myself. I have dyslexia, and I'm deaf in one ear, and sometimes these systems just aren't set up for people that don't operate in the standard way, and sometimes all it takes is one judge just to say, hang on, everybody, let's calm down and take a step back and reassess. So yeah, that's something which is in my head when we're doing this for a hopeful effect.
I think it's really interesting that you've used the word compassion twice. I've written a novel, Cal, and the point of the novel at the end of the day is that you can reduce the purpose of our lives, which temporary phenomena for us all, to a single word, and it's that word that you used twice, Jacob: compassion, a recognition of our shared existence. And anything that contributes to that is good, and anything that doesn't, I think, is bad. And that's part of the message in this. Dave and Maggie are not them, they're us.
When Stephen and I first discussed doing this, he said to me that at some point people will cry. And I said, well, that's a lot of pressure on my acting skills, Stephen. But the story itself will do that. And I think over the rehearsal process and the learning that we've done to develop the play to where it is now, it will touch on nerves of everyone in this world, because either they've practiced and they've seen similar experiences, or they know someone that's done it themselves. So I think, and then Stephen's idea to put it in reverse chronology is so very effective and powerful, particularly for the practitioners that we're performing this to, because they'll watch a scene, they'll have an assumption, they'll have a preconception based on their experience, and that will then change scene by scene as we go backwards in their lives and learn about the scenarios that led them to where they are. And actually, perhaps you have more sympathy for them than you otherwise would, or you have a different emotional attachment to each character based on what's shown you throughout the course of the play in reverse order. So I think hopefully everyone in attendance, those who practice in family law and those who don't, will have a deeper understanding and respect for the difficult experiences these couples' families are going through.
The idea of this is show, don't tell. Show people the stories that we see all too often in family court work, and ask them to make up their own minds and to form their views. I went to far too many conferences, and still do, which are, as I call it, death by PowerPoint, where people are talking at the audience. And I wanted to do something completely different. I wanted to tell the story and then have the discussion afterwards. And I really believe that works. So I hope that people will leave this play thinking very hard about the system and how it operates, and also how they operate within their own family lives. And I think, Carl, the other point I'd like to just get across, how grateful we are for those who sponsor these plays. People make an assumption that actors do it out of love. They do. Actors have tremendous skills and art. And I really love working with the group of actors who are doing this play. But they too have mortgages and rent to pay. And so sponsorship of the arts is vital, which is why we are really grateful to RWK Goodman for what has been done to sponsor this performance.
Thanks for listening to Legal Thinking. To find out more about RWK Goodman's family law services, please visit rwkgoodman.com/personal/family. If you're interested in learning more about the production itself, please get in contact by emailing cal.barron@rwkgoodman.com.